Are you ready for the talks for today? Yes. So today is the last day of our wonderful congress, our wonderful event. Um, it's been a great time, but today we can expect a lot of more technical talks, and especially the talks of today are so technical and so interesting to me. I've enjoyed all of the talks, but now I'm willing to hear the talks about Danny and Lance, who are here from the United States. Any one of you heard about the DEF CON conference? Raise your hand. Yes. So Danny and Lance uh, come from Salt Lake City. They have a DEF CON group, which is a hackerspace. They've took part in the organization of events like DEF CON and Black Hat. And now Danny will perform a talk about something which is really new and so dangerous, the ransomware. But I won't explain that. I will let Danny to explain that. So welcome, Danny Horton.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Lo siento, no hablo español. I'm the big, silly, dumb American. But I do know enough Spanish to say at least my favorite, and I believe the most beautiful sentence in all of Spanish. Uno más cervezas, por favor. That's all I know. So, thank you for the introduction. As you said, I'm Danny Howerton. I'm from Salt Lake City, Utah, in the United States. I am a member of the DEF CON 801 DEF CON group, also a founding member of the hackerspace out in Salt Lake. If you're ever in the area, we've generally crossed paths. Presented at several conferences out there in the United States, and this is my first time international, and I'm very excited to be here. So this is going to be fantastic. So during the day, for my day job, I'm a threat analyst at Proofpoint. I am responsible for looking at malware all day, tracking actors, tracking campaigns, and doing write-ups on those for customers. Let's see. Yep, all that good stuff. So I figured I should put that, because all my slides are branded Proofpoint. I'm not going to sell you anything today. I don't care about that. I'm just here to talk tech. Quick agenda. Talk about ransomware 101, distribution methods, families, notable infection cases that you may have seen in the media, some final thoughts, resources, references. So we'll get right into it. The goal of ransomware is to, as I said in the slide, restrict availability of data or services controlled by an attacker. And then generally, they require something to restore that data and or services. Money is by far the biggest ransom demand, generally done in Bitcoin, because of the semi-anonymous nature of it. I like to think of ransomware pretty much just like online dating. You try and infect as many people as possible, and maybe a small fraction of those will actually pay you. The more people you infect, the more money you're going to get. I don't know how scientific this Business Insider article that I found online is actually, but basically males to females on dating websites is a ratio of 25 messages per one response. So as I said, you scale up that number of messages sent, you'll get more in return. And I believe I read it was 5-to-1 for women. So big disadvantage for us. And I couldn't not put in some terrible Russian dating profile pictures. If you haven't seen them, they're amazing. These are some of my favorites. And hey, I mean, if they can get messages back from other lovely young ladies, then ransomware authors can as well. Brief history of ransomware. It's been going on for a little while, but it's kind of hit the threshold at the beginning of the year where everybody wants to talk about it all of a sudden. Back in 1989, one of the first ransomware variants we saw, and they would actually put that on floppy drives and mail it to people disguised as AIDS research. You would install it, and then it would say, hey, you need to renew your license by sending me money in the mail. They tracked it down to this doctor who did say that all the profits were going to go towards AIDS research. Don't know if that's the case or not. Mid-2000s, we saw PGP coder, or sometimes referenced as GP coder. One of the first crypto ransomwares that would actually encrypt files. Does anyone remember the fake AV from the mid-2000s? That might be what it looked like. Paraded around as a fake antivirus. It would say, hey, you're infected, and this is bad news. Pay us, and we'll fix it. It didn't actually restrict any services. It was kind of more annoying than anything else. 2010's Winlock was a fun example. It would actually require you to SMS, text message, a premium number to unlock it. So they would make money that way. And then really what kind of changed the game and what we hear about all year, it was Locky when it kind of debuted in February. So we'll talk a decent amount about that. So as I've kind of already alluded to a little bit, in my mind there's two types of ransomware, the lockers and then the crypto-based ransomware. The lockers can do anything from, put your lock, change your password and lock your computer and say, hey, pay me and I'll unlock it. I've seen samples that use JavaScript to explode your Windows IE window to full screen and won't let you close it until you pay them. Those kind of things. And then really where everything has been going is cryptographic based. So being able to mathematically almost guarantee that you're not going to be able to get your files back without that encryption key. It tends to be pretty prolific, and there's several different types. You can do specific files. A lot of them have a preset list of file extensions that they're going to scan the file system for, and if there's a file with that file extension, it's going to encrypt it. There's ones that actually go into the master boot record and encrypt that, so you can't actually boot your entire system. And then, do full disk encryption. So you're kind of screwed if you don't pay or actually have backups. Let's see. So distribution methods. I work for Proofpoint, so some of what I see is kind of skewed to the services that we offer kind of naturally. Email is the biggest one because we run email gateways. So we generally see two main types that come in, either over malicious URLs in the email. The user has to click on, go to a website, and then get infected, or it comes in as an attachment. I find the attachments fascinating because there's a wide variety. You can attach any file to an email and send it off and hope somebody runs it. Malicious URLs, you'll generally see three categories. You use public storage, Dropbox, Google Drive, things like that to host your malware. You can compromise somebody's website and then redirect them to an exploit kit that may exploit the browser, drop the malware, and there you go. Or the one that kind of scares me more than anything else is malvertising. This is malicious ads that filter into your website unbeknownst to you through the advertiser network, and it executes ransomware. And there have been some notable cases from very large websites that have been hit by this. Some people call it, maybe watering hole exploits or things like that. But with the authors of the website don't have full control over the ads that are placed there. So, what are you really to do? Went into this a little bit. Google Drive, Dropbox for compromised websites, where we see a lot of executables hosted on Dropbox. Compromising the web server, hit all these. Yep, you can, a lot of times they'll inject JavaScript into a website, inject iframes, flash objects, that then either do the exploiting itself or will point you to something that will exploit you. And then malvertising. So here's an example of a malicious attachment. This is a Word document, well, two of them actually. One of them, it's a common lure that we tend to see. It says, hey, for security reasons, go ahead and enable macros, which is the scripting engine. And we're gonna do a bunch of cool things that you probably don't want done. So that gets a lot of people, or they will embed the file as an OLE object directly, double click it, it opens and executes. Here's an example of a link coming in from an email to somewhere on Google Docs. You'll see, using HTML magic, they're disguising it as USPS, but when you actually hover your mouse over it, you see that it goes to somewhere else. In this case, what we do as a service is we overwrite URLs in emails so we can track clicks, and every user gets a different rewritten URL so you can see who's actually clicking on all this malicious stuff. But you can kind of decode it a little bit. You see, HTTPS 3a _ docs.google.com, and I kind of did that for you in the pink text. Link to a file on a compromised website. So there's a vulnerability in, say, WordPress. An attacker will leverage that vulnerability, drop their malware on that, and start throwing out links to everybody to download and run that malware. Looks a little more legit, specifically if it's strategic enough where you compromise a partner's website and then send emails to your actual intended target, so they're expecting things to come from that domain. It can be pretty nasty. And straight up compromised website, in this point, you can kind of see there's an encoded iframe in there. It may be hard to see in the back, but one of the fun ways to detect this is you'll actually see multiple HTML close body tags, because when they compromise it, they just go to the very bottom of the file, dump all their code, and they include closing of the body as well. So kind of easy to spot like that. And it's going to be a little bit of a journey over the next 4 slides, but this is an example of malvertising. So we made one request on the very top, and we'll kind of see the details. It has an iframe with width, height, and then it points to this other website underneath that. That then runs to this JavaScript, which then loads this JavaScript, which then actually runs the malicious stuff right there. And I have highlighted all of the actual malicious JavaScript files that was loaded on this. They kind of like to take you on a labyrinth through it to make it difficult for analysts to actually track, but it's not too terrible. So we've talked about delivery methods and all that. So let's talk a little bit about some ransomware families that we'll see in the wild. First 2, they're dead and defunct. They're not around anymore. But we can't not talk about CryptoWall. CryptoWall was really big before Locky came out. We as a company last saw it April 15th, spread by both email and exploit kits. For a long time, it didn't actually change a lot of the file extensions after it encrypted them, until the very last version where it kind of changed the file name to random.random text. So everyone was different. TeslaCrypt, AlphaCrypt, this was a fairly decent one, mostly spread over exploit kits. So you visit the website, exploit your browser, and you'll get AlphaCrypt or TeslaCrypt. It's referred to as either or. They did actually give up, and they released all of their master decryption keys for everyone, and actually a web page that said, we're sorry, here's the master key. You can kind of see some of the extensions that it renamed the encrypted files to. XXX, TTT, micro, MP3. There were a decent amount of them. Kaspersky puts out a decryptor for that, so you can just download that, run it, and it'll decrypt everything for you without any issues. That's their I'm sorry page. So what was funny about this is they actually stopped, and a researcher, I can't remember where at, actually reached out through their support system, because they're that sophisticated, and asked, hey, since you guys gave up, can we have the master key? They said, yeah, sure, here you go. Fantastic, thanks. All right, so as I said earlier, Locky kind of changed the game in the ransomware world. It written by, we believe to be the same group responsible for the Dridex banking Trojan. And we'll see them actually switch off in between like different campaigns every week. Like Monday might be Locky, Tuesday might be Dridex. So they use that a lot, primarily spread through email attachments. For a while they were doing malicious macros. Now they've kind of moved on to zipped JavaScript files. So you have to unzip it and then double click on the JavaScript. It downloads the executable, runs it, and you're owned. We see sometimes in the millions of messages per day, sometimes in the tens of millions of messages a day, just from Locky. It's gigantic sometimes, and we tend to have some problems keeping up sometimes with the load that puts on all our systems. Locky was named for the extension that it originally used, .locky, once it encrypted all the files, and it's gone through a couple changes since February. They started doing this Norse god theme, Odin and Thor and Acer, but they did Acer, however you pronounce that, I don't even know. They actually changed that in the beginning of the week, and out here in Spain, I'm like, I gotta update my slides, okay. And then yesterday, they updated it again. I'm like, come on, knock it off. I'm tired of updating these slides. But that was really peculiar. We don't know why they've updated twice within a week. That's very uncharacteristic of them. So here's what happens when you get infected by Locky. It's going to go ahead and open your browser and send you to this local HTML page that says, hey, you've been owned, all your stuff's encrypted, go to our site, download Tor, buy some Bitcoins, and give them to us. It'll also, as well, because it's not subtle at all, they pop up the window for the picture that gives you all the exact same information. And also change the desktop image, because you really need to know that you've been hit by this thing. And kind of the cool thing with Locky is it will detect the current language on the system and then give a ransom message in that language. Why? Well, because more likely that you're going to pay if you can read what's going on. So that's cool. And then when your files are encrypted, that's kind of what it looks like. It drops HTML files and pretty much all the directories that it'll encrypt a file in. Again, not even close to subtle. And change the extension with the actual infection ID for you, because everybody gets a unique ID, so they know what key to use to decrypt everything. So that's huge. Cerber is the second biggest one we see. This is what I find fascinating because, well, not only did it kind of debut on my birthday, which was kind of neat, but it's a ransomware as a service. So we actually have a group of malicious actors that write, maintain not only the code, but the infrastructure for it, and then have affiliates who then are responsible for spreading the malware, and then they get a cut of everything that comes back. Economics is fantastic in the world of malware. And it's great reading up on it if you're ever interested in it. But it'll spread through anything that it can, basically, but mainly email. Again, large campaigns, hundreds of thousands of messages per day sometimes. And a lot of times they like to use the .server 2, 3 for its extension. That's what Cerber looks like once you're infected. It's kind of a similar thing. They'll change your desktop wallpaper and point you to everywhere you need to go to pay them. Once you actually, they'll pop up that dialog box again try not so subtle. And then once you go to their Onion site, that's kind of what it looks like. And they give you, hey, if you pay within X amount of time, you'll get a discount to kind of encourage payment and kind of scare people a little bit. So about 1.5 Bitcoin-ish when the time I took this screenshot. Here's an infographic from a report that Checkpoint did. They kind of did a little infiltration of the infrastructure, which fantastic read. Go download the PDF and go through it. But they made this infographic to show how the ransomware as a service actually works. So you have the victim's Bitcoin wallets. It goes to the author of server, which could be a group, him, her, they, and then mixes it through Bitcoin Mixer service, gives money out to the affiliates for their cut, and then the main author gets to profit. That is an example of what the dashboard looks like from an affiliate. You can kind of see, it says installs 10,178, and then over on the right, you'll see a little bit of profit margin. I believe this was just an example. This isn't an actual real affiliate due to OPSEC reasons. And then there's several others because it's really easy to write ransomware. So we see hundreds of different variants and families all the time, and we're discovering them almost weekly. Jigsaw or Crypto Hitman, you'll see that a decent amount. It likes to go through a couple rebrandings here or there. That one was fun because they found a vulnerability in it where it would make an API call out to check its Bitcoin wallet. And if you run a man-in-the-middle proxy, you just change the amount, and it goes, okay, and decrypts everything. So that's great. Poshcoder, I find very interesting because it's all in PowerShell. So you can have a document that runs a PowerShell script, and it's 61 lines of PowerShell to encrypt all the files on your system. And the vast majority of those lines are the list of extensions that it's targeting. And then one we discovered recently, Ransock, that one's really fun. Because once it gets onto your system, it will log into using the credentials saved on your computer, it will log into your social media profiles, grab the images from them, and scan the file system for evidence of child porn or media downloaded by torrents. And once it finds these, it then says, hey, I found all this evidence of illegal things you're doing, pay me, and it'll go away. With the actual images from your social media profile. Scary. So if you're into all of that, you pretty much want to pay it or to make it go away. That's awesome. That is an example screenshot that we pulled. We published this on our blog. But as you can see, it grabbed the Facebook image and LinkedIn image. It also does Skype and Twitter, I believe. And kind of looks official. And the interesting one about this is they're not actually using Bitcoin. They ask for a direct credit card, which is really different. So some notable ransomware infections that you may have heard in the media. Very common theme, hospitals. Yay. Hospitals tend to get hit a lot for various different reasons. They don't have budget. They don't focus on security. They focus on saving people's lives. But this can kind of come back to bite people. Hollywood Presbyterian, that was the big one. They were if I believe I'm correct, they were the first notable example of an organization actually paying the ransom to restore services because it was getting so bad. They were sending people to other hospitals because they could not actually take care of them. Down for more than a week, and about 17,000 USD, or when I converted it, almost 16,000 euro to bring everything back online. Can be a risky ordeal paying the ransom. I'll get into that a little later. It's not always guaranteed they'll give you a working key. 2 hospitals in Germany were also hit. Pretty bad. Both of them, as far as we know today, refused to pay the ransom. And it took them much longer to come back online because they refused to do that. This one, very boring American sport team. NASCAR, it's terrible. They got hit a couple days before a big race, and they had lots and lots of valuable data, research. What was it? Something, I think I had it in here. A lot of simulations of races that would have been very expensive to replicate by hand, and they can't really do that 4 days out. They ended up paying the ransomware, and then it kind of got out in the news, and somebody told them, go talk to Malwarebytes. They deal with malware, and Malwarebytes ended up sponsoring their car. So, I mean, I guess it could work out for them in the end, because they got all their stuff back in a new sponsor, I guess. Yeah. University of Calgary, that's going to be the last example that I give. They were hit, hundreds of systems. They pretty much told everybody don't use email. Well, they took email down for anyone that wasn't critical in the environment. And then they ended up paying 20,000 Canadian dollars to rid themselves of it. So some prevention and incident handling. Really, prevention is fairly simple. Biggest thing that I advocate is least privilege access. Only give people access to things in a writable permission that they need. Because anything that's writable on the system, whether it's mapped network drives, if you can write to it, you can change all the data in there. Regularly back up your systems. So if you get hit, you can restore from backup and have minimal downtime or data loss. This one may be more difficult for organizations, but if you could limit the propagation channels as much as possible. I know it's possible to disable macros across an enterprise. It doesn't always happen for political reasons. Sometimes you have a business entity that requires macros to be able to function correctly. Can't always do that. Actually, I was talking with one of our customers who they were getting their documents inside their organization flagged as malware because the macro was running straight PowerShell from the macro script. And that's pretty much, we die, kill in a fire, no. And they said, well, that's a partner. We've written it into our contract that if anything happens to our systems, they are legally liable for that, and we want to whitelist anything coming from them. Okay, sure. If that's the business decision you want to make, that's what you make. But if you can disable as many propagation channels as possible, it'll make your lives much easier. Little bit of a plug. Any kind of sandboxing service, whether you roll your own, pay for one from a company, they actually have really good detection rates on this because, as I said, it's not subtle. It's very easy to see what it's trying to do and what it is doing. And one of the most important, user protection, user education. So many times I've had people come up to me like, oh, you deal with malware? Like ransomware, I got hit the other day. Sucks, huh? Like, yeah, well, you just don't click the button that says run scripts on my computer. So being able to show people examples of this and what happens, I think is very, very highly beneficial. If you actually do get hit, make sure you have an IR plan ready before you get hit. It makes things so much easier, and you don't want to be scrambling in the dark, not knowing what you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing, what you need to collect for forensics reasons. Another thing that I see that people kind of over freak out about, we haven't seen really much ransomware that has wormable features. Once a system gets infected, it's infected, nothing else around it does. I've seen organizations that once one person gets infected, they bring down the whole network, like everything, to prevent propagation, which is great. If you want to be that vigilant about it, fantastic. You may suffer some service outage. Goes without saying. Many samples do require internet access for either exfiltrating the key out of the system for decryption or beaconing back to the control server to get the encryption key that it should use. If you're limiting internet access to things that may not need internet access, a lot of times you can stop it right in its tracks. Locky has actually changed to a network-less key generation model, so it does not need internet access to be able to encrypt everything, which is kind of scary. And then decide whether or not you're going to pay the ransom, whether there's a threshold of systems or critical systems that you just need to get back online. Make that decision beforehand. You can go either way. I'm not here to tell you yes or no, but being able to be prepared for that situation is amazing. If you do pay, you're not always guaranteed to get the right key that's going to decrypt your files. You're dealing with criminals, they may not be honest. That's how it goes. Or if you do pay, word might spread that, hey, they paid, target them, they might pay again, and you may get it much more. So, things to keep in mind. Some final thoughts, takeaways. Ransomware is fantastic at what it does. It's there simply to make money. That's all it does. And they make a lot of money. We don't have exact figures without actually infiltrating their organizational structure and viewing all of that. But you can estimate, say Locky sends out 20 million emails in a day. If 1% of those see it in their inbox, 1% of those end up actually getting infected and pay it, then I think it's a couple $100 per. That's a decent takeaway for a day. So let's see. Hundreds of different versions. We see them all the time because it's really easy to write. Use it as a baseball bat for your higher ups to say, I need more budget. Like, this could really affect our organization and negatively impact it. And then you're going to be questioning why I'm even here doing my job, which you don't want. And one of the biggest things that I think really that it does well is it changes the argument that a lot of users have. There's nothing that needs to target me. I don't have any critical resources. There's nothing special. Yeah, you do. You have money. And if you're willing to give your money away, then you're a target. Absolutely everyone is a target. End of story. And it's not going away because of how easy it is to write. But where do we go from here? And this is a question that I've been pondering for a little while now, is in an industry where it is standard practice to be exploiting your systems in the name of defense, I can test how this is going. I see nobody testing for this. It's very easy. Well, first of all, you're not going to infect yourself with a file that you found from the internet and that the money goes to somebody else. But how easy this is to write, either you can pay somebody to do it in a day or two, write it yourself, and if you have access to those encryption keys in a predetermined format or key, it's very easy to infect somebody and say, hey, what was their access privileges? All of a sudden, all of these map network drives are down, nobody can access them. Quickly run the decryptor program and restore services. In my mind, it's a low barrier to test for. And I honestly don't understand why people don't do that more. If you're not comfortable with it, because it's risky. No one's really done that before. Why would I encrypt all the files on my system? But we saw those arguments way back several years ago when pen testing was becoming an actual valid thing. So that's where I believe we need to go to start being proactive against some of these breakouts. Either pay somebody to do it or do it yourself. Questions, if we have time. I don't even know. Yeah, 9:45. Nothing. I did a great job. Fantastic. So here's some resources that I actually included. Symantec did a fantastic report on the history of ransomware. Let's see. M. Chow, professor at Tufts University in Massachusetts, I believe, keeps this awesome little GitHub repo of a list of people who have paid and who haven't that have hit the news. Cool things to look at. There's an awesome Google Doc spreadsheet with a list of every known ransomware that we know about, what extensions it's using, what ransom messages it's giving you, if there's any public decryptor for it. So I guess I should have probably put that in the IR slide, that always have that available. So if you do get hit, you can look up really easily if there's anything that's easily decryptable. All my references, you don't really care, and that's it for me unless we have more questions.
Have you ever come across someone who's like brute forced the key on the system? Or have you ever been able to see if they're using like weak encryption and reversing it?
The question is, have we seen anybody who is either A, brute forcing the decryption key, or finding weaknesses in the encryption implementation? Yes. There are researchers that have made their name on Twitter doing just that. I can't remember his name. I might be able to pull it up after this if you have questions, but that's pretty much all he does. He looks at ransomware, finds errors in their implementation, and releases decryptors for them. And he's gotten so much notoriety in that community, or among the malware authors, that they have put out special versions of their ransomware that specifically call him out and say, hey, we hate this guy, go away. And in one case, I think it was last week, actually, a malware author was having problems implementing his crypto routines and actually reached out to this guy and said, hey, can you help me fix it? Whether or not you want to do that, I can't remember if he did or not. But, moral conundrum. Do you help him propagate ransomware, or do you intentionally place a backdoor into his ransomware and then release the decryptor for it? Up to you. So.
Thank you very much, Danny. You made this so clear for everybody. Now we